hunting. So it's lovely to have you with us. To say where you are in the world, that would be really nice to hear, and how you're getting on with lockdown. And if you have any questions about the University of Oxford's vaccine or the other vaccines, because obviously, as Fergus mentioned, that's not the only one. I'm going to go to a few questions here. So Zach, hi from Canada. I'm curious to know if this vaccine will be widespread and shared with other countries, or will each country develop their own vaccine? And that's kind of what I wanted to know as well. Like, pharmaceutical companies are going to make so much money from this. And what is the process? What happens?
Okay, so obviously the vaccine companies, the pharma companies, need to be paid for what they're doing. But most of them have said that in the initial pandemic, over the coming year, that they're going to do everything what they call not for profit. So they're not going to. There's a lot of them that have said they'll do this without making profit. So, for example, I'll give you one of them, the Oxford vaccine, one of the leading contenders. That is being produced by AstraZeneca in the UK. And AstraZeneca said that it's going to be able to provide 2 billion doses by the end of 2021. It's about 1 billion for India and a lot of developing countries, 300 million doses for the US, 100 million for the UK, 400 million for Europe. And the EU states have come together and said that they will share equitably vaccines that they buy among their member states, so that they go to the people who need them most, rather than it being just, you made the vaccine, you get it first. Now, obviously, if you have, as a government, like the UK government has put a lot of money into the Oxford vaccine, it does expect to be kind of at the front of the queue. But the team at Oxford, I know, are really, really keen that their technology goes to the people who need it. So there's a little bit, if you've developed the vaccine, you kind of get it first. But companies are really, really keen to share their technology. So I believe that AstraZeneca has done a deal with the Russian government to provide them with the vaccine. And a lot of the other vaccines, so the German, US, Pfizer, BioNTech, the UK did a deal to buy doses of that, and the American government has also bought them. The American government's got a very much an approach where it wants to secure doses for its population first and foremost. And it's got something which is called Operation Warp Speed, which I think is probably a reference to Star Trek. And it signed a deal just today with Pfizer BioNTech for quite a lot of doses of the same vaccine the UK government's bought. So there are all kinds of deals being done. And I think it's fair to say, if you're in one of the countries which has developed one of the vaccines, and Canada has got a vaccine in the clinic, that it's pretty highly likely that your government is going to be at the top of the queue to buy it. But we have to ensure, and the World Health Organization has got a consortium together that is trying to ensure equity, equal access, so that, if you're in Malawi or you're in Ghana, where they don't have a vaccine in trials, that your people there will get access to it, because it's absolutely vital that people who are in the greatest need, so that would be frontline healthcare workers, that will be people who have conditions that make them very vulnerable to the virus, and the elderly, those at-risk groups, and also some ethnic groups as well, because we know that Black and Asian and minority ethnic groups have had around the world a higher mortality rate than white people. And the reasons for that are not entirely clear, but there has definitely been a higher mortality rate. So we've got to ensure that the groups of people, the elderly, anyone who's vulnerable, that they get the vaccine. Because if we just hoard it for rich countries that develop them, that won't be the right response, because this is a pandemic. Pandemic simply means a global epidemic. And if it's raging in one country because they can't get a vaccine, but you've protected your people, that means the pandemic is still, roaring along, which is what it's doing. It's still accelerating at the moment. So we need to protect people globally.
In terms of safety then, because we are actually getting a lot of comments about safety. So I suppose, and we're talking about the University of Oxford vaccine at the moment, how safe, we're at early stages, so how safe would it be to take it? You have a lot of people who are fair play to them, offering themselves up to be part of the testing process. And then there was an ethical question about infecting people with coronavirus to see how they'd go. So
I offered myself up for the Oxford trial, but unfortunately I've had COVID, so I've got antibodies. So I ended up giving plasma instead for the convalescent plasma. But I've been on a vaccine trial before where I rolled up my sleeve and I got a couple of doses of a bird flu vaccine. That's 14 years ago, and that was in Oxford. So fair play to the volunteers who stepped forward to this. In Oxford, they either get the COVID vaccine or they get another vaccine, a meningitis vaccine, and nobody tells them which one they're going to get. And the reason why they get another vaccine rather than, just like a saline, a salt solution or water or something, is because the other vaccine, which is a proper licensed vaccine against meningitis, that can cause slight side effects, fever, fatigue, headache, and things like that. And what you want to do is you want to really not let your volunteers know which one they've got. And the results from the trial, because it was mostly a safety trial that came out on Monday, was there were no serious side effects. There were some side effects of fever, headache, and sore arms and things like that, but nothing that couldn't be dealt with by paracetamol. So, and that's been pretty much the story from the other vaccines as well, that there have been minor side effects, because it really is important that, although I've said, look, we're going at a tremendous pace, it would be a catastrophe if a vaccine was used and it ended up causing problems, because it is absolutely essential. Vaccines have been probably the greatest innovation in terms of life-saving, in terms of medicine in the last 100 years. But they're the only medicine that you give to people who are absolutely well. If you have cancer or you have heart disease or stroke and you're taking a medicine, you're prepared to accept some side effects because you are hoping that the treatment will cure you of your disease. So if that gives you some side effects, if you're taking chemotherapy for cancer, you're prepared to put up with being sick. With a vaccine, you're well already, so you don't want that to make you sick. So it's really important with all these vaccines that, although everything's going at pace and everyone's saying, when can we get it, when can we get it, that these vaccines go through a proper safety checks. And it's going to take months to go through that. And there is an anti-vax community out there which has actually been growing, partly as a result of social media and also some world leaders who made very sort of anti-vax comments over the periods of years. And so, there are a lot of people in the US who say they simply wouldn't take a COVID vaccine. So it's absolutely makes it even more essential that the teams who are producing these vaccines do it in an ethical way and they're not rushed into it. Yeah. And I've talked to now several of the lead investigators and I said, are you going to cut any corners here? Because we need this vaccine. And they've all said, no, we mustn't, because of the importance of getting this right.
Yeah, because people are worried. And, I've seen lots of comments on our social media saying that it seems too quick, for them. And, but, as you said, like we're at early stages, so it's we don't know when it's going to come out, and they're obviously doing their tests. Another question here from Boston: how will a vaccine handle multiple strains of coronavirus?
Yeah, well, there are a number of strains out there, but so far, pretty much all of the vaccines should work against each strain of coronavirus because the spike protein is pretty universal. And so the vaccine should work against coronavirus, even if it was to mutate slightly, and all viruses do mutate a bit. But it's sufficiently broad, the vaccines, the genetic material in there would be enough to recognize the coronavirus that's out there. So that shouldn't be a problem as yet.
Okay. Another question, I think this is quite a good one. Will this need to be taken yearly like the flu shot? And I read somewhere that, we're obviously in lockdown mode, now, but that this isn't like this is going to go on for years now. What do you say to that?
It's quite possible that we might have to have a yearly shot of COVID vaccine to be protected. We do against flu. Flu is a really, really successful virus because it adapts. It drifts. It has a slight change. So the spikes on it slightly change every year, and they change enough every few years for you to, you really need a new flu shot every autumn so that you are protected. And so it's perfectly possible that we might have to have a dose every year. And because there are so many different approaches, let's say we have 3 or 4 different vaccines that work, it might be that some of them prime the immune system quite well, and then you could get a booster with a different type of COVID vaccine. It might be that you have one year and then another booster the next year that then keeps you going for a few years. But we're all basically in the dark about this. We don't know because this virus hasn't been around. Well, it's only been around for 8 months or so, maybe a bit longer than that. It might have been rumbling around in China a bit longer. But the first official reports, were at the end of December. And so this is all really new. So we don't know how long this question I came back to right at the beginning of our discussion. We've only followed up volunteers for a matter of a couple of months. We don't know whether the vaccine protects them in the real world, and we don't know if it does, for how long. One of the other things is maybe the vaccine, there's 2 types of success. We could have a vaccine that completely protects you against getting coronavirus infection. That would be fabulous because that would mean if you're immunized and you're completely protected, you could go and hug all those old grannies and all those vulnerable people, and you'd know that they'd be safe. That would be perfect. That's what we really want. But if we got a vaccine that didn't stop you getting infected, but stopped you getting ill, then that would be great too, because if everyone got immunized and they didn't get ill, that would be fabulous too. But it would mean that you might be able to pass on the infection. So there's different levels of success.
Yeah, so we better wrap up, but there's a long way to go.
I can't believe that's half an hour.
I know, but this is our conversations. I know, we'll get you on again.
I've been talking too much, I'm sorry.
No, you have not. And that was brilliant. Thank you so much. All the main questions you answered. So that's exactly what we wanted.
Right. So thanks to everyone out there, because I can see lots of nice hearts going up and and some mostly nice comments. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, people have been great. Thank you, Fergus, for joining us. I know that you're extremely busy, so we will get you on again now that you thought that was really quick. And thank you to everybody else for commenting, sharing. We had comments from Nepal, New York, India, Turkey, Kuwait, Taiwan, Lesotho, Azerbaijan, Argentina,